Hello everyone! So recently, Prydwen, which is a very well-known website for their guides and especially tier lists for gacha games including Honkai Star Rail, Zenless of Zero, and Wuthering Waves, finally released their site for Genshin with the release of Snezhnaya. And this was a big talking point within the community as a lot of people were discussing about what they liked and or disliked about their guides and especially their tier lists because for some reason people love to argue about tier lists. Some more well-known Theorycrafters did announce that they were officially working with Prydwen, including the Genshin Scientists and Jackson Files. But another TCer who also announced they were working with Prydwen was Pyrogod, or Pyro, a name that isn't very well known in the general community, but is nevertheless a very experienced Theorycrafter who is known within the more niche TC community. And I got the wonderful opportunity to get in call with him to get more insight about how the Genshin site for Prydwen came to be, what goes into their character guides, his thoughts on the tier list and how it was created, then ending the discussion by talking about the current Genshin overall meta. This video will have more of a podcast vibe, which isn't for everyone, but I hope you all enjoy regardless. And with that, let's start the call. So today with me, I have Theorycrafter Pyrogod, or Pyro, and he currently works with Prydwen. So how about you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do? Because I've heard that you've actually been in the TC scene for a pretty long time, and probably because I've been playing since launch, but I haven't been really too deep into TC, especially the community, until recently, and but when I've been talking to a lot of people, so you just give us a little introduction of what you've been doing.
Yeah, I started Genshin back on Venti Banner. I wasn't a day one, sadly. It was but I've basically been in the TC scene for most of my life since, well, early KQM days where I really was just doing TC by myself to eventually joining KQM, leaving, starting up my own shops, and kind of just being around the block. I mainly look at some sheet TC, obviously, but also I'm very in depth in my speedrun side, and I've had also a pretty good look in drafting in Genshin Impact as well. So I really like to cover my bases and see the cool shit that this game has got to offer in terms of mechanics and optimization.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so very experienced. Because like there's been just like a few theory crafters that you've been working with. Like for example, Jackson and TGS have also announced that they've been working with Prydwen. So it really looks like Prydwen is assembling the TC Avengers, as I like to say, because a lot of solid theory crafters. So my first question I want to ask you is, how'd you get into Prydwen? Because you've been doing a lot of stuff, maybe working with a lot of other not theory crafters and content creators before. So how'd you get into Prydwen?
Well, honestly, I can't share the most about it, but it all started because I slandered one HSR content creator in a DMs of a different content creator, and somehow I ended up here.
Okay then. You probably don't want to talk about who that HSR theory crafter is, but
Yeah,
okay.
I don't want to say
You
who it
know,
is. Yeah.
things work in magical ways sometimes. That's how life works. So you're here. You're working with Prydwen, and I guess the main thing I want to ask is what do you do at Prydwen? Like, what is your main role? What is your main job? What is your main responsibilities?
Yeah. Uh, I do specific guides in Prydwen. Like there is a team filled with people who look at the more newer guides and look at the more let's just say simpler and easy characters, and I try and put myself on some of the hardest characters, and because I know some of the, I would argue, the best connections to people at their characters and at their game,
Define
right?
hard
Such as
characters.
Matt
Like, is there a specific example?
yeah, Mavwika's an example, Skirk's an example, Alatunosh is coming up and she's also going to be an example. More
Okay.
Lani and Kanichi are going to be joining the fray. I did a bit of Nefa. That's and those are the sort of characters I'm specifically focusing on. And eventually I'm going to go and do some of the older characters whilst the rest of the team moves forward. Right? The only reason why I chose myself for this, and though I think the rest of the team really supports me on this, is that I know some of the best players in each of these characters, and I can effectively squeeze any DPS or any technology out of a character as hard as I can. And if I've squeezed it all out, there's nothing left. And yeah, I'm pretty good at optimizing. That's really all I have to say.
Okay. Yeah, I think from what I've talked to you before, you're definitely an optimizer. Definitely look at speedruns and stuff like that. Um,
Yeah.
so like you worked on Malvika, right? So I'm just looking at the Malvika guide right here. So like, is this like all you, or like just like feedback? Like, do you do the writing? Do you do the calcs? For example, the like the weapon calcs here, constellation calcs. I think there's team calcs like
Yeah.
here with specific teams and specific yeah Mawiga combos. Like, is this all you, or what? What?
I don't write the guide from top to end, right? All of us do work with specific writers for each of the guides, and basically, as a Theorycrafter, we're supposed to supply the information in terms of the calcs, of the weapon, con, team, and everything associated with that, and then also to go and give some sort of broad discretion in how to like maneuver and change and what direction is going to be looking at the guide, right? Of what things that we want in, what things do we want out, right? Of like what teams we're choosing, what we want to represent and show. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. And this is like for calcs. Do you like, since there's a lot of theory crafters working on this? Do you like compare different people's Malwika calcs, or is this mainly focused on like one person's calcs?
yeah. One person kind of does their own set of
Uh
calcs.
huh.
Like that is people do go look over other people's calcs just to go and say like, oh, is this number right?
Yeah. So like peer review.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, there is definitely some accountability, and there's also if there is a mistake calc which does go out there, then a lot of people will see it. People will know the problem, and it'll get changed. I think the best example of this is my Alicino calc. For some reason, my KQMC, my KQMS subset auto subset thing, it just broke completely. Uh, I've given the change information, so it should be better now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Okay. Okay. That's cool. I personally, right? I'm not sure how this is with like HSR and CZZ, but I personally haven't heard of like, which deer crafters are working on the guides and stuff like that. So I think this for, well, I guess that maybe it's because I am not too familiar with that community and stuff like that. But what I do appreciate is that there are at least a few people that have said that, oh, we worked on the Pride and guides and stuff like that. So I think it's good to know that there are people, like people that we can identify who's behind it. Not that we can like, oh, like, because I'm obviously I'm not going to say, oh, like if there's a mistake, then we know who to blame, right? But like we know that, oh, okay, so this person's working on it. This person has been a theory crafter for a long time and has been doing good work. So there's like a good credibility and reliability behind the information
yeah,
that's coming out from these guides, which I do appreciate.
exactly. And if it is one of my guys, then you can wholeheartedly slander me. And I
Okay.
have, but yeah, like it does provide some level of accountability of um, we made a mistake here. Let's fix it. Job done. Right, and things like that. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty useful to go and have a spokesperson or someone to communicate with because of trying to. Because a lot of times, like having to put so much effort to go and talk to an organization like Prydwen of and all their channels can be rather difficult, annoying, and more effort than a lot of people want to do. Whilst quite literally just uh asking someone why is it like this or why didn't you account for this, I think is very fair and reasonable.
Yeah, you say Prydwen is a pretty big organization. Can you like, are you allowed to like let us know like how big is the team for Genshin specifically, or is that yes top secret
I
information?
can tell you that there's more people than the total number of people have been said right now.
I mean, yeah, of
Um,
course.
I
Is,
can't
can you
leak
give
to
a
you the
general number,
exact
or
amount,
no? Don't. Yeah.
but
How about a general number?
probably around 10. I think is
Okay,
a pretty
that's
a
kind of what
number.
I expected, honestly. But I feel like that's a lot of people, though.
Yeah, that is a lot.
Yeah.
Like, and especially because they're most of the people in there are the kind of best in their own class,
Mm-hmm.
so it's pretty elite talent.
Okay. Because I heard like it's not just their crafters, but also like speed runners. I think that's what you said before.
Oh no no no! I have a more so special thing where for a lot of my guides, I will go and partner up with a speedrunner or someone who knows so much about XYZ character that they can kind of take me through and give me advice and things to add and opinions and such, right? Like for the Malvika guide, a lot of the combos that and things that were done were made with the help of Lat Zero, right? Um, and it's so much better to have someone to go rely off of as opposed to um quite literally doing everything by yourself because it's so easy to go miss small things and the trickle down of information is usually rather slow. And I think I've spent a lot of time in the speedrunning scene, but I do miss a couple things here and there from time to time, and it's nice knowing someone who can quite literally answer my
Hmm.
questions and help optimize a lot of these calcs.
Yeah, that's honestly that's good to hear. I do remember Lot Zero, the name coming up. I think I was trying to replicate his Malvika clear for the I forgot what the boss was. It's the one that brings up the two pillars. Yeah, I can clear, but
Oh
it's
yeah,
okay.
SSA pillar.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can do it. I can replicate it, but yeah, he that clear was very impressive. So and like I
exactly.
think that is like especially combos wise, it's good to see what's actually possible in game because with all like pre-release calcs and stuff, we can always estimate with frame timings and all that stuff. But I think it's good to have an actual example of it being executed, whether if it's even in a dummy or in an
Exactly.
actual fight, right?
Yeah, it's dummy or real fights, mainly dummy for a lot of these
Mm-hmm.
calc optimizations, but also the fact of like a lot of times in TC, it's very easy to go skip over something rather mundane and then not realize, oh wait, it's a DPS increase, right? A lot of things you just kind of have to test, know, and have the feel for it. And maybe there's eccentric techniques and things that you can go use to go and gain DPS here, there, and the other. Like, I think a pretty decent example is the Chev melt, right? Of a lot of people don't realize how surprisingly good is Chevrus in a melt team. Um, and the fact that it's still better than Zolonin and it's pretty close to Janssen, and if you had C2 Malvika, it can be better than Bennett.
Mm. Yeah, how come it's on here then?
Well, it's just porting stuff. The, all the calcs have been done for all this. It's just that it takes time to go and make all these little things, put it
Mm.
in, and a lot of small changes like this have been happening everywhere on the guide, so it takes time. Same as the Alicino things.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I'll admit
give it
that
a couple
I
of
do think
days.
this looks very clean, right? I guess like UI
Oh yeah.
wise, I think this looks nice.
It looks so
Yeah.
good. I was so happy when I saw this because like I'm the one who kind of recommended like somewhat of this layout, especially in terms of like the rotation, right?
Mm.
Having the rotation length and showing what you have to do in terms of icons. Like I don't know if you remember this. There's a Genshin rotation maker, which is effectively now like a dead website, but it used to be really cool and it used to help a lot of people like visualize the rotation, and I think that using that to go and show rotations is really really nice.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of that website before, but yeah. I mean, it's good. This is not your
Yeah,
work though. Someone else coded this. Don't take the credit.
yeah. No, I
Yeah.
took the I'll take the credit in terms of giving the idea, but
Yeah,
another
yeah,
everything
yeah.
beyond that, no.
Yeah. But that's that's like another part of the team because you said like around let's just say around 10ish tier cards, but there's also like other people
It was
on
just
this team,
10
right?
people. There's not 10 Theorycrafters.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. So that's collectively like coders and I don't know stuff like that. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah. There's coders, there's writers,
yeah,
there's
okay. Well,
helpers as
in
well.
that case, 10 doesn't seem that large. I feel like 10 theory crafters. That's a lot
10
because that's like a
Theorycrafters
lot
would
of
be
but
insane.
that's like a lot of characters. But also, I guess you could say like maybe too many conflicting ideas. I don't know.
Well, yeah, and you know the team can only be so big, and
Yeah.
at some point it starts becoming too hard to manage, and separate views, separate ideas. It's
Mm,
better to have less and higher quality in my eyes than
mm,
more and less
mm.
qualified.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else you want to like specifically highlight on the guides section? Because I know that's the main focus of what the theory crafters are actually working on Prydwen, the guide section.
Yes. Specifically for the guides and my ones in particular, I try and have some level of a baseline casual, but kind of show people what can be possible with the XYZ unit, right? Um, because I feel a great example of this is look at how CDC and Malvika first came. When CDC on Malvika was first discovered, no one did it. Everyone just thought, okay, Chinese technology, I ain't touching this, right? But slowly, as people discovered, improved, and it shared and came to the EN side, and then EN speedrunners started doing it, and now effectively, I've seen pretty much everyone hear at least something about doing CDCs on Malvika, and because of that, we've been going. We can do like 14C in Overload, right? Which is basically the pinnacle of Malvika CDCs, and I feel like this can happen with a lot more of the other characters if people can see and know what technology there is. So
Hmm.
in Pride, when we kind of cater for the bottom end, but I like to go show a little bit of the top. That's why a lot of these Marv calcs have pretty spicy stuff in there.
Yeah.
There are some casual combos. I don't know if they've been ported yet. It's like C3F and C2D.
Simple.
Because
Let's see. What do you got for simple? Okay. What this? Wait. This is a. Why is there a Veresa Mawika? I guess it counts as a Mawika team.
well, it's a funny story. I was with Led Zero once, and he said that like we're talking about Doran, right? And I said that, or it's either me or he. One of us said that low-key doing CDCs on Malvika is probably just better than doing Doran, because with Varesa you have like a lot of bit at the end of the rotation where you kind of just doing nothing and you're doing manual plunges, right? Which is like kind of DPS loss. So what you could do is you could just go and use an entire Malvika burst, then fill the downtime with the Varesa. So it's a Malvika team with the Varesa sub DPS, but they're both on field.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's better than Doran, I'll tell you that much.
Hmm.
But ethical? No.
I mean,
Good? Yes.
yeah. Mawika's sub DPS is burst and then like it's just CDC while she's
Yeah,
while
pretty
she's
much. Well,
on.
you know.
Crazy. Yeah, you know, okay. There's let's see, simpler rotations 5C. I mean, I think for the melt stuff, there's more complicated stuff. But anyway, that's aside the point.
Yeah, some
Anyway,
of this stuff hasn't been fully ported in yet.
yeah, yeah.
There'll be C2D and C3F
Mm-hmm.
or in there,
Mm-hmm.
but it'll take a bit of
Okay.
time.
Okay. Anything on the guides section that you'd like to mention?
I think it covers most of the stuff. Like what I will say is specifically I really like the fact that I was able to push for showing percentages between teams, because to give an example, like Prydwen, the only real problem that I have with Prydwen is that he can't explain everything. But that's just the
Mm-hmm.
nature of it. Of we need to go and be so short and sharp to go and have people's attention without having to write a 10-page thesis, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the opposite of KQM in terms of how they look at things. Of they believe in the length, but I don't know if people are going to read all this extra information, nor are they going to be able to understand it. And I think another big thing that we have, which I really really like, is the fact that we can go and show the difference between teams. Because how do you know how important a unit is? Well, the only way to really see it is if I go put in a team and I remove it, how much am I going to lose? Am I going to lose, a French country mile, or am I going to go say, this is nothing?
I think the perfect example here on the screen is Neferlama, Neferlama, Neferlama. Oh, whoopsie. No llama,
Yep,
56%. So
exactly.
yeah.
Or I think there's another calc where it's column being a hyper, and the moment you remove llama, it just divides your DPS by 2.
Oh,
I don't know if it's on there,
Columbina
but
main DPS. Is it on here?
yes. Oh, it's on there. Yes.
Nope, not yet.
The
But as
team's on there, but the calcs aren't.
yeah, I mean it's the same logic as with Nefer with the quills and stuff,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
exactly. Right.
same
It's
logic.
and for people to go see that and understand that, right? I think it matters a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So people, because it's a comparison of how important a character is to an X other character. Sometimes they're so important that you can't live without them. Sometimes they're so worthless that if you could just bat your eyes and go, oh, and what does this character do?
Yeah.
That, and I just think that was really nice.
Okay. Okay. I mean, yeah, that is important information to know. So, appreciate that's on here. Okay, so I think that's good enough for the guide section. Now I want to move on to the tier list because I feel like when most casuals or normal people think of Prydwen, unfortunately they don't look at the guides. Well, maybe I feel like the guides is the secondary one, but the main thing that a lot of people like to talk about is the tier list because people love ranking their characters for some odd reason. So yeah,
The agenda is strong.
the agenda is strong. So let's just start off with how are theory crafters that maybe you or maybe other people that you work with, how are they involved with the tier list? Because to give some background, from what I've heard, the theory crafters don't focus on the tier list. Their focus is on the guides. So the guides are the most important, which we just covered. But just working on the tier list is kind of like part of their job description, and they just have to do it. So just wanted to ask, what is the general role of theory crafters on the tier list, and maybe how you are involved, if at all.
Yeah. The theory crafters, and honestly, a lot of people in have their own way in on the tier list. Some people are writers who go and voice their opinions. Some people are the other theory crafters. There's a lot of weigh in from everyone. Now, everyone's vote is not equal because if someone who knows far less about the game will be valued a bit less than someone who knows a lot, right? And basically, it's a small discussion that takes place. Some people argue for X character, some people argue for Y character, and then you slowly put it on there. I will say there is some aspect of the tier list being somewhat just appeasing the community because of, at the end of the day, the whole problem of a tier list is that it is a snapshot of a million different levels. In Genshin Impact, how you evaluate something can be put on a level from 1 to 10. And then, if you go into the skill level, the gameplay level, the flexibility level, this, that, the other, and every single person will have a different value on how much they care about XYZ thing.
Exactly.
Right? And so, if you get a picture of all the levers, that's basically what says what the tier list is. The problem is, not everyone knows exactly where all the levers are placed when they go look at something like this. So then it becomes incredibly hard to go and balance and evaluate a tier list, especially for a very arbitrary casual level. Like, this is the equivalent of sticking a flag in a desert and then trying to find it without knowing where the flag is. Like, you just lost. Genuinely.
Yeah, I just think that's the
Specifically myself. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna mention I guess that's just maybe the flaws of a general tier list. I mean, it's like an overall tier list, but that's general, right? There's so many factors that one could evaluate a unit, and for example, maybe someone really they really appreciate how, for example, Flynn's is extremely easy to play, extremely shill orient, he works well with the shill compared to maybe Nefer for some reason. Nefer, for example, where it doesn't have that much shield, it is a bit harder to play. And then you have some people ranking like that. I feel like there's a lot of ways you can evaluate characters.
You can pretty easily argue for a bunch of different kinds of tier lists and units in different positions. Units can be rather flexible. Now, there's obviously cases where I'm not saying you can go think that Hydro Mannequin is S tier, but I think my point is pretty roughly said. What I will also say is that I specifically have not touched the tier list in any way. Well, other than my addition of adding the mannequin in eventually. I specifically banned myself from this because I feel like I am too meta to really give an opinion on this.
Too
and
meta.
If I do, it will more. It's more likely to go make the tier list worse than better, and I'm afraid of what I'll do.
Okay, well, we can get back to that later. So, shelve that for now.
Yeah.
So, you personally don't have that much impact on the tier list. Okay. Do you know even if you don't yourself have that much impact, do you know how these discussions work for especially the overall tier list, because it says like, oh, it takes in involved DPS calculations, DPS testing, and like other stuff. But I feel like it's very general. Like these are just
Yeah,
general
they don't use
statements.
specific calcs,
Uh
right? We
huh.
don't have a specific set of calcs just in the back corner where we go pull up and we use like this number is this number and this number is this number. This is kind of a lot of just experience, because if you go and play the game long enough and you've spent enough time around TC, you kind of eventually know what DPS numbers units can reach in roughly what situations, right? And how the DPS number changes when you include X thing or you remove Y thing, right? And uh, if people do not know, like Jackson and TGS are pretty knowledgeable in these numbers and can go pull up their own set of calcs with correction factors or pretty much anything. So we are analyzing not with a specific calc in mind, but with a sort of range of calcs and dummy values.
Okay. I mean, like, there's only so much you can do if it's like extremely general, which I do appreciate that you're gonna make it like a Stygian tier list. Now, initially, I did think that there wasn't really a point because I felt like when you're making an overall tier list, you also take into account like Stygian performance as well. But I can kind of see the value of a specific Stygian tier list for, I
Yeah,
guess,
it's a buff specific one.
yeah. So it's like in a way, it's kind of like maybe not a tier list per se, but I feel like this would be more informational on how like what characters are good against those bosses. Like one of those like video guides are like
Exactly.
how to beat X Stygian boss, how to complete, how to beat 7.0 Stygian onslaught
Yeah.
instead of
And to
like
know
evaluating
like the
units.
sneaky units to run,
Mm-hmm.
like for example, Amber to go break the bat shield,
Yeah,
or Jean on full damage stuff.
yeah. So yeah, definitely like S tier for for the bat.
Yeah, those sorts of things of those like knowledge checks and knowing like roughly what team can kind of like ignore the matchup problems versus like, oh wait, this is a problem. I don't want to run this here, right? Those are two different things that I feel like a lot of people, especially when they've not fought these bosses in the overworld and they're kind of confused, they just end up ramming their head against a wall and then just trying like 30 different teams in 30 different places and wasting so much attempts as opposed to just having somewhat of information to go and play off and use.
Yeah,
But yeah.
yeah. So I am excited for the Stygian tier list. I think that I honestly maybe a hot tip. But I feel like that would be way more helpful than the overall. But I think
Oh, it is.
yeah, for like practical reasons. But like I like for the overall, honestly, I don't have that many issues on it. You mentioned that you like just like a collective calcs and stuff like that, not really exact, kind of. I mean, I don't want to say vibes, but like it's kind of vibes, right? When you've calced and like played the game for so long,
It
you kind of
is.
know like general, right? And I feel like
Yeah.
there's not some like, oh, okay, for me, right? For me, I don't really for me I don't really care about the bottom. I mainly like focus on the top piece. I feel like that matters a little bit more. I don't think there's anything like too egregious, like incorrect where it's like, oh, why is this person here? I guess for like, I know a lot of people like say, oh, maybe X character should be moved up, maybe X character should be moved down. I don't really care about that. I don't think we need to focus on that either. I feel like it's kind of, I don't know, unnecessary. But maybe
Yeah.
let's just say for fun, like for you, right? What is one maybe unit that placement that you don't agree with? Because like obviously this tier list is like collective opinion, right? But like maybe for yourself, just looking at this as what is one maybe thing that you would change that's, I mean, I guess it doesn't have to be like a hot take or anything, but
Yeah. I don't think this is exactly a character specifically, but I think just the whole idea of trying to base our tier list of Caesar R0 or Caesar R1, I think is not the best example, right? This is going to be leaking into my personal views on the meta, but um, basically, why would someone invest into a team to go get the least efficient option, right? There's no, in my eyes, you should go and get the best increase no matter what. I will always want to go spend $10 to go buy the newspaper, not $11 to go buy the same newspaper, because $1 saved is $1 saved in my eyes, and I think that matters a lot for teams because of some teams have to go distribute so much investment across a team, whilst some teams you can just go C1, C2 on them, and they get penalized really hard for not being able to do such things, right? Even though they take around the similar number of 5 stars to get things done. And C6 4 stars and things like that, there's a lot of like gripes that you can go into. Like specifically, if I had to name a character that I think should probably go higher, it's probably Morlani, well, Arlecchino, but that's
Mhm.
more of my meta head leaning in because of C1 or C2's Morlani split rotations are honestly disgusting for DPS and well, pretty powerful in Stygian. Complete bitch to play though, but a point still stands. And same thing for Arlecchino. Arlecchino Hex Vape does so much damage, just so much damage that
I've heard.
it's
I've heard.
honestly one of the highest DPS teams in the game at these lower investment brackets.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. I'll get back to. So I guess one thing that I wanted to say was like maybe Maui could be like, for example, off field damage support. I don't know. I feel like you can put it in T 0.5, but that's very nitpicky. It's like whatever. I don't really care. But going back into the Molani point, because I did remember seeing a tweet, because there was a tweet that was like, oh, why is Molani right next to Lohan or whatever. But I do think that you do give a good point where, for example, I guess personally, my experience with Molani is really bad, right? I don't really
Yeah,
like how she plays, but I think that the reason why she feels so bad for me is that she just C0, no battle pass weapon, whatever. So she hits like a wet noodle. But then you mentioned like, oh, okay, well, if you have C2R1, maybe the higher cost brackets, then she just can delete bosses, and even like brute force mechanics where she's technically not the best at because she just does so much damage, right? And I think that's like an interesting thing to start heading into like meta talk, because um, I think that's something that could be a very interesting topic to discuss. Because you mentioned before how like you choose not to be too involved with the general tier list because of your view on the meta.
yeah. I'm probably one of the harshest viewers on the meta that probably is out there. Um,
Explain why it's harsh.
yeah, it's simply because of I believe in the logic of brute force flex. As a free to play, the only way of reasonably clearing Stygian, there's kind of two methods. One, you go and pull a bunch of units C0, and you need to go and gamble on the best ones. And if you do, and you have the foresight of what Stygian boss is going to come up, what specific unit do I need for each specific boss, you're golden. But I think what Flint has shown us of no one I think reasonably could have guessed Flint's getting 30 bosses in a row. It's not 30, but get my hyperbole. Uh
You got a lot of bosses. It's getting close to
yeah,
30 at this point.
honestly, close enough. You round up, it's probably there. But like you people do not have the specific foresight, and I would rather go invest into something safer and I would argue a little more proven of the patented quote unquote brute force flex, because of vertical units in this game, and if you invest properly, do so much DPS they can almost defy some of the core logic of Genshin Impact and just destroy matchups, right? I think the prime example of this is, well, 3 or 4 cost Malvika destroying every single Luna boss that's existed. Better than most of the Luna units themselves. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
true,
think there's
true.
been one Abyss, there's one Stygian, other than maybe the Crab, which Llama against the Crab, like, I don't know why how you put that in, okay? Like, that's got to be studied.
No, that was
But
cheesed.
other than that, like, she's basically better on every single Luna boss than the unit they were made for.
I mean, yeah, especially yeah. I mean,
Gecko,
yeah,
all the Flynn's bosses, just my weaker bosses. Like, I just think it's free wins, easy pickings,
yeah.
unless my weakest.
Yeah.
But
First,
there's other characters.
it definitely doesn't feel like that C0. Like, cause I have C0 R1, and I feel like you didn't play out of your mind. But like you said, when you talk about like increased cost brackets, like C2 R1 Mawika, like pretty much clears any single lunar boss. Like C2,
Yeah,
she can clear Knuckle Ducko. She can clear. I mean, she can clear Gecko as C0 R1. But like, if you have C2 R1, then it's like mega free. Um, so
exactly.
yeah. I think, yeah, like I think you mentioned a good point about vertical investment. I think that I'm not sure. Like, the thing is that I'm a little bit torn because I I wouldn't call myself like hardcore,
Yep.
right? And personally, I think that you don't really need to like for my account experience, right? I don't think I have
Mm.
that much vertical investment. My highest vertical is C2R1 Raiden, which I'm hoping that gets a buff. Obviously, C2R1 doesn't even matter for her anymore at the moment. But for like modern DPSs, it's like C0R1, right? And I think that C0R1, C0R0 is like perfectly fine to do Fearless. Or like even lower difficulty if players don't care about Dire or whatever, right? And I do think that maybe if you're someone, because I know that a lot of people just like pulling characters, different characters, because I feel like in a gacha game like Genshin or any gacha game, people get attached to the characters and they like a lot of characters, so they like pulling more characters and having a diverse roster that they can play with. So I think in that sense, that kind of caters to that type of playstyle. And I do think that for lower difficulties, including Fearless, unless you're like pulling all bricks, then I think that's fine. You can clear Fearless perfectly. But especially with Stygian, I do think that if you're someone who is focused on meta and actually wants to clear Dire, which is the hardest difficulty in the game, I do think, and I definitely, this is where I 100% agree with you, it's especially when you have limited resources, it's not feasible to get every good character at a good investment level to clear all the new dire bosses or whatever they come out, when you could just, for example, you have C2R on Malwika, boom, you have one team that can consistently clear one Stygian boss every rotation. And that's like, that's one thing I think of my accounts. Like, sometimes I think, oh, I missed one boss. Imagine if I have C2R1 Malwika, it'd be free. Imagine if I have C2R1 Malwika right now. It's like, it's very interesting to
Exactly, and
see. Or it's very interesting to think about because I don't think there is that much emphasis on like vertical investment. I think it's been increasing. Like the talk has been increasing now, though.
I think it has with just Stygian's existence, right? Most of my meta views are really focused on Dire, but to be fair, if a C2 Malvika is going to absolutely destroy Dire, what is that gonna do to Fearless? Or Menacing? Or anything
That's
below it? Like, I
yeah.
feel like that is hydrogen bomb versus coughing baby type scenario that we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've not played the most Fearless, I will admit to that. I've mainly looked at play on Dia and Test Dummy. But I think it should be even easier because of the weakness of Brute Force Flex is the flex aspect of the more flex you need to run, the weaker your team becomes because of the less great units you can go and buff your quote unquote big main DPS, right? But in Fearless, where you have half the HP, or, well, only fractions of the HP of the actual Dire boss, that makes it so much easier to go clear. Right? To the point that, like,
Yeah.
honestly, you can go and pretty reasonably find a new unit. It doesn't have to be the best unit in the game, right? In for the region. To give an example of, I look pretty down on unit like Flint because I don't value his flexibility aspect,
Flins.
right? But even a vertical Flint can absolutely destroy Fearless
Mm-hmm.
because it's just so easy for him to do it, and he's got so much more DPS than really anything that you can muster, and the mechanics aren't gonna be as bad as Die is gonna be in terms of difficulty and everything else. Because the mechanics are also easier on Fearless a lot of the times. So yeah, like
Aren't the mechanics the same? Like fear.
well, it could be like less specifically in terms of sometimes it's less gauge, sometimes it's less. It can be sometimes easier mechanics, not
Okay.
always, but that is sometimes true.
I just know that like from menacing to fearless slash dire, then that's like they like the fearless and dire shared like the mechanics, and then like everything else below is like way easier. But
Maybe I just be hallucinating, but either way,
I think the
the
point is
HP is
like the HP is high. Like the HP itself makes the mechanic harder.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's basically it. I also believe in terms of like far more min-max gameplay than a lot of other people do. I call it Chinesium in terms of builds, min-max, and the entire other show because of Chinese speedrunning. But
Hey,
It's
from what I've heard, the Chinese speedrunners don't know about the Nefer rotation, and like they don't do it well. That's what I've heard. The Nefer with the
that is true.
17.5 second with the Columbia charge attack. They gotta get on that.
Yeah, there are plenty of stuff that CN don't really look at. It's because that they don't really. There's not really that great of a connection between us and them. It's more we take their things and they look at much about us, right?
Yeah,
And
we're just
he,
chuds.
pretty much, and they kind of test things based on try X thing on test dummy and see until it works, or try X thing on clear and see if it works, as opposed to doing math.
I mean, they
Because
got
to them it's easier and they can get more realistic examples and they're more apprehensive of TC as a whole compared to the Western community where you can go on Twitter and you can see like 30 different calculators who go calc on YouTube in 0.3 seconds after they launch.
yeah. The West loves their sheets.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, like
And
I know like there's like people made testing dummies of like the actual bosses like simulate like boss simulations, right?
yes.
Do we even like
Uh,
that's not on here, right? Like on the West, has that been made in the West? Because I know it's common.
There are some ones
There are
that have been
some.
made,
Okay.
right? There are, the thing is that sometimes the accuracy and the veracity of those are hard to really emulate perfectly. Like, there have been a bunch of small bugs on different bosses, and so I think it's a lot of time it's a pretty large hassle, and most people will be better off by using intuition, uh, from your local speedrunner to go and tell if a clear will most likely be possible or not, right? Because to give an example, I was working on on Dog a lot to go and looking at the lowest cost on there. I'm probably not the best at this, but I was looking at Flynn's and I was arguing to a Flynn speedrunner that I think that full cost Benefa would be faster. Well, is going to be cheaper than Flynn's because I don't think full cost Flynn's can work because of how the rotations lined up and the breakpoints and everything, right? And yeah, like, and also I was talking about Nefer specifically on that boss. Marv is always going to get a free clear, and exactly what cost Varka's going to be. Those sorts of things, like, you can just go ask around. I think that's going to be far better of an example of seeing what unit XYZ can clear
Mm. Yeah,
than
okay.
using like the dummy or anything like that.
Mhm.
Because you don't know if it's accurate, and also like when the mechanic windows are coming, you have to rely on leaks, which sometimes are great, sometimes are not, and
Mhm.
just get a honestly, just go into beta yourself. That's probably the easier answer.
Yeah. Don't get yourself arrested though.
Yeah. Don't leak though, okay? Kids,
Okay.
don't leak.
Yeah. So like if we take into account like maybe dire optimization and costs, like um do you see like some of these units like maybe not as good and maybe some like because for example you've pointed out Milani probably moves up, right?
Yeah,
Malrika definitely stays up there.
Yeah, like
Would you consider like Skirk? Because I know Skirk combos on that's a whole other separate thing. How red you
exactly.
how
Like
green
same thing as
how good are you
Malrika
green or
combos.
how red are you going to go?
Exactly. Well, a lot of stir combos, if you're good enough, can be done green,
Yeah.
right? To give an example, you can go look at Prez 13 and 2, 3 and 3 combo, which is realistically no one's doing that except on red. But he can do it green, so you get it green, and that's my excuse for putting a red combo in the skirt guide, whilst the entire Prydwen has to say green. It's effectively a red combo, but someone can do it once, so
Yeah.
surely it is. But
To get
the
yeah.
skirt combos do matter a lot in terms
Mhm.
of squeezing a lot of DPS, because especially when you get more vertical, how squeezing these combo optimizations matter more and more and more as more
Mhm.
and more of your uh, team DPS comes from your hypercarry, right? And especially when people do calcs and KQMC, a lot of people don't take into account of how hard hypercarries really do scale, right? And I think that is very
Mhm.
proven in
Mhm.
test dummy of, well, the views on, well, I think my views on sub DPS are somewhat a testament to this point of I don't think any of them are really that great, simply because
You're
of
against the wheelchairs. So that's
I
yeah.
just think that, like,
Yeah.
why would you get a wheelchair when you can get a unit to go and do it better? And you know what a real wheelchair is? Instead of playing Benefa or anything like that, why don't we just go put the 3-character Mavika team wheelchair? Because I can tell you, that's a lot better. Don't get me wrong.
Mawika team, true.
3-character Mavika kind of wins. Or 3-character Molani, I don't know, pick your favorite.
I mean, yeah, I think there's definitely been some talk of like, oh, does Lenefa deserve to be T0 or whatever, like, but like, you know, I guess.
I just view
Like
in
that.
the
That's
more in
that.
terms of efficiency.
I mean, yeah, that goes in. That I mean, that goes to the point of like a maybe more optimization wise, but versus, I know this tier list takes into account like flexibility and stuff like that, right? Versatility.
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
speaking more about my specific
Yeah.
view on the game.
Hmm.
Like, you have only so many pulls to really spend. Like, in a region, you roughly around to get about 8 cost to go and spend on what you want, right? Because you get around like a bit over 800 pulls, and like it's around takes like 100 and something pulls to go and get on average a 5 star. So you get around 8. So instead of pulling a lot of these sub DPSs, you can go pull some insane hypercarries, and they can have flex slots to go deal with the bosses. And a hypercarry on a arguably bad day could do a lot of times better than the best day of a non-hypercarry with far less investment, right? So that's why Mavwik has been so good at like having his automatic button of, oh, I see a hard boss, it's okay, let me put the Mavwika solution onto it, and then you have the 2 other bosses which are free, much more free to clear, right? And a lot of teams can only really open up with these verticals. And you know what the enemy is to a lot of these hypercarry teams? Sub DPSs. Mainly because of this DPS value of sub DPSs, when it goes through time, dies very fast. Look at a unit like Emily. When she came out, she was prized in the value of sub DPS, right? We go till when Eon Sun dropped, she got booted from the Kenichi team. And even Nicole can't save Emily on the Kenichi team. And if Nicole can't save her, well, nothing can save her at this rate. Or like, to give an even previous example, of Farina plus even Esco in a Skirk team. Skirk is that strong that she's effectively made Farina and Eskov into supports. That's how much in terms of, with a Skirk combo, you can really do.
Yeah, Farina
Right?
goes
Because if
on Tenacity and Escoff goes on Scroll.
yeah, Scroll or Noblesse, like
Yep.
this, there is a reason why we do this, and there's a reason why, like, in total, you're roughly around 10-ish% each, 20%-ish in total, right? Team DPS when you're actually doing really advanced skirt combos. That means a lot, and not having the power budget in these units into doing damage and more focusing on specifically helping out the DPS goes so much further than a lot of other units, right?
Hmm.
And that you can even just go see in this vertical DPS calcs, right? Compare Flynn's to a Nefer or Zubai, especially when you go in more vertical in cost. Zubai still has Linnea, which I don't think is that great because sub DPS and her supportive capability may as well be a cough in the wind.
I mean, her C2 is good,
30%
no?
spread. The C2 is nice, but let me put it like this. How you know when a unit really hates their supports is at like 7 or 8 cost, what do? Do they go C6 themselves and not get any supports? Because a lot of time the C6s on these units aren't crazy enough to go compared to a lot of C2s. And from my memory of Zubai, 7 or 8 cost Zubai is C6 Zubai with Bina and Sig, or C6 Zubai with Aino. Because Goro buffs that much.
Mm.
Right? If you compare the value there, it is so significant. That's why also, like, in certain brackets, Nefer does really, really well because of cons are so strong.
Mm-hmm.
Each of them are massive increases. C1 giving you motion value, and the C2 giving you EM and final damage increase. Like, brother, those are the things that you shouldn't give to any unit in their cons. That's the only reason why Nefer, who is a terrible element, who is terribly reliant on a unit like Lauma, can still do really well as a hypercarry. And even in places where you don't really like an Nefer, right? Example is a Wolf, because you're gonna have to go and replace Lauma from your team. This Nefer has to play without Lauma, right? Yeah, you're gonna keep the Columbina because you need the Hydra application.
Uh-huh.
But yeah,
Okay, you just keep
and
like
you saw on
Nefer,
that boss.
Lalma, Bina, and then Flex? Because that
Well,
was.
on that boss, you need to do Electro Swirl or Pyro Swirl to go get rid of the shield. So it's a 2-unit replacement boss.
Oh, it is a two ribbon. Yeah, you're right. Because yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and that's why Nefer's cons are that great, because at C2R1 with an Aino, and Fischl Sucrose, you can go clear that boss on Dire. Or you can go replace a Sig with a Columbina, but point roughly still stands of you're going to have to go live a lot of times without some of these sub-deepers in these units. And so you'd rather than be 4 stars and be so much easier to go replace and bat an eye on. That's why Zubai struggles a lot more in Stygian compared to DPS dummy of, one, if you go put like a element applying off-field on a Zubai team, she goes from doing DPS to not doing DPS. Because if you have a foreign element which isn't Geo or Hydro, it reacts with your Lunar Crystallizers, meaning that you don't get any Lunar Crystallizers. You get whatever that other reaction is, of freeze, like vape or anything, and your Zubai cannot use your E because you don't have any Lunar Crystallize stacks for her. So she just breaks down. Also, another thing which is kind of inherently bad with Zubai is the fact that she's more reliant on that 4th slot than teams like Nefer, right? Nefer losing Sucrose, it matters, but at the end of the day, it's fine. Losing Eluga or Goro or Linnea, those are big losses, and they matter. Nefer can batter eyes, Zubai is crying in the corner. Those sorts of differences really add up when you have to go flex a lot. So you want to really see who is good with a 1 unit replace, who is good with a 2 unit replace. On top of that, like, you need to think about how your Stygian lineup works as a whole. Some teams are really good at picking out one boss and completely demolishing them, but they're not flexible enough to deal with the others. Example, Zubai and Nefer. Because being Geo and Dendro, man, is a fate nearly as bad as death, but if they find a boss they can remotely have a fair chance on, they will destroy it if they have vertical. Whilst you got things like Malvika and Skirk where they can just kind of eat any boss up. They'll eat the plate. And usually you want to go and play your account, meta-wise, you want to replace 1 unit every, like, 2-3 regions, right? So, you go there's going to be the shill team of the region, whatever that may be. Whether if it's Luna, you pick 1 Luna team, and you brute force you go brute force vertical on that Luna team. And Nefer may not like what Flynn's bosses do. She can pretty easily brute force them if you have enough investment. Right, at that 6 cost bracket, which you kind of want to be as a free-to-play. Or, in Stella, whatever this mystical Stella Hypercarry is, invest into them, they'll go and destroy everything else. And we can use CMC till then. Then you can have your 2 previous region teams to really choose. You can choose which one is going where. Like, if you have Malvika plus a Luna team, you give Malvika the hardest next matchup, and you give your Luna team the easiest matchup because they're the least flexible, right? If you're Skirk and Malvika, then obviously you can go do whatever you want. But that's the sort of lineup that you're trying to dream about and you're trying to eventually achieve. And if this all works on Dire, it's going to be insane on Fearless. Especially if you are doing a lot of these combos, because a lot of these combos make so much of a difference. Right? Like, that's another thing specifically. I feel like a lot of people do not know how strong of these units can be if we just do specifically optimal investment, right? Like, Zubai, if you go look at the 4-cost DPS right now, he's probably around, like, 250, probably a couple cents higher, right? I don't know how much scamming we're going to do with the DPS, but I'm going to be honest, every dummy run is basically a scam these days. Then you've got, like, Sandrone, which I've not looked at the most at, but if I had to guess, it's probably, like, a little bit higher than Zubai at full cost, because Sandrone, Sig, Odette, Yaimiko C1, and then, you can go put Chi-Chi C6 for all the fucks I give. But I feel like a lot of people do not realize that Malvika has got a 410k DPS at full cost, which can be more. I think there's more left on the table there, if you want to go scrape at it. But that, in Hex Vape with C4 Mona, if you drop the C4 Mona and don't put it to C2, if you optimize that a bit more, you can still probably keep it at above 400k DPS, right? C6 4-star, obviously, but even without it, being
it's a little
like
cost value, I would say, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little cost value.
We're giving cost back to Zubai with C6 Linnea, C6 Aluga.
Yeah.
We're doing a lot of stuff for a lot of these teams. So by nature, everything will be cost batty, but the nature of the custom is that simple that you can point out the flaw and you can go and put in what you think it really should be. And whatever you think it is, sure. I just think that having near double the DPS of a team kind of solves that problem.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah,
You definitely talked a lot there. I do want to go back like a few
yeah,
things
sure. We
yeah,
can go
I did
back.
want to go back just really quickly. Like I think it is quite surprising you say like Nefer is flexible because like when you think like oh Nefer wants like Dendro Hydro and like the thought of like replacing even Llama is like you would think like she's one of the most inflexible DPSs. But I guess if you consider like I think you mentioned if you consider higher costs like CTR1, I mean it doesn't really matter.
Well, it's more compared to Zubai specifically. In the grand scheme, she's not very flexible. But
Uh-huh.
to be fair, a lot of the teams right now aren't that flexible.
I feel like that's
Skirk
just
doesn't
been
understand
like
flexibility.
that's been like the common like basically the way Hoyer has been making teams, right? Like even if we
Yeah,
look
it's
at the
pretty hard to
stellar
have a
stuff,
random element in there.
even if we look at the
Like,
stellar teams, are they that flexible? I'm not sure. We try to flex a Hydro unit into a stellar swirl team, and it doesn't look very good. So
yeah, it's there are some significant problems with something in Stella, right? And
mhm.
those are sort of guidelines when you're looking at a unit. You want them to have great vertical cons,
Yeah.
a very strong team, and rather inexpensive team, but that can be built on. Because a lot of the times, pulling new units does not mean that they're necessarily better. Like, and pulling flexible units does not also mean that they're also going to stay.
Mhm.
And I a lot of the times view a unit in terms of you may not know if you're ever going to see this unit again or ever
Mhm.
going to use this unit again in a future team.
Mhm.
So you need to go and extract every piece of value at once. And I'll give two examples. Like Farina. If Skirk didn't exist, Farina would not be used in any team to this day
True. I agree.
after a region.
Yep.
I'm not going to talk about how I view Farina within a region because I think that's legally considered slander. But I think a different example I can give is something like Siege at Lali. Now, if you have something like a Siege at Lali where, oh my god, it's such an insane increase,
Mhm.
and you told me I'm going to choose Siege at Lali over Siege Malvika, I really can't complain to you because either way, you're going to get 95% of a C2 Malvika right now, and you can easily convince me in the future, probably someone's going to use C2 Solali, and even if they don't, I've gotten 95% of my payout and no risk, effectively near no risk of investing in something in the future. Compared to something like a Farina C2, where it's kind of clear that the C2 specifically will lose a lot of value, and we don't know if the meta is heading to that direction. It's like C2 Nahida. You never saw her until she became a Sucrose kind of barely upgrade side grade question mark. It's hard to say with the
Yeah.
C2 Nahida. Sometimes a bit better, sometimes a little bit worse. But you don't know how it's going to end up until you see it in the future. So only invest in the things that you know are going to go and get the value now.
Well, just to ask,
Because
how
the
do you?
future could be anything.
Because
Hmm?
you mentioned okay C2 like for example C2 said Lolly you get value now because you can just play with Mawika, right? That's what you're trying to say.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
For a Mavika team, right? But maybe in the future, as a future Pyro DPS, and CJ Lolly cannot be bad to chuck it in there. Like,
I guess for Melt, right? Like she's gonna be good for
yeah,
Melt
yeah.
teams.
If they're going to do anything related to Melt, and even if CJ Lolly you never use again other than in your Mavika team, I think it's had a pretty good life on your Mavika team.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not now because of these days you got Hexfate Mono, which is disgusting. But on Lolly release, you could pretty easily tell me that.
Mm. Okay. Um. Yeah, I think you make some very good points. Some very interesting and unique perspectives on the meta. I guess just to end it off, Stellar, right? Stellar, we have Sandrone, we have the new buffed units,
Yeah.
potentially some future stuff. Do you see your view on the meta changing with like, because you could say like, if we look at baseline levels, I feel like the Stellar teams are like just kind of as usual as the game progresses. It's like just like higher baseline, increasing the higher baseline. Just to give an example, I was debating on getting C2 Mawika, but then I was like, okay, well I could get C2 Mawika, but she's like, even though she's still really good, well she's still an old unit. And I guess I could get C2 the Soritsa if assuming she's a DPS, and that would be like she's starting at a higher baseline, and then what if she gets an Omega good C2? Then that seems like an even better investment. So I guess do you think your change on the meta is going to change with Stellar with their higher baseline? Do you still believe like okay, you still want to look at because I think you mentioned like you still want to look
Yeah.
at characters with like because you prefer Hypercarries, right? And then invest into them.
Yes, exactly. because they're the most flexible. They scale the best with constellation because of like, if you had a sub DPS, right? If a unit is 100% of team's damage and you get a 20%, 25% increase on that, versus if a unit is a 33% of the team's damage and you get a, I don't know, 50% increase, you get around what's 33 divided by 2? It's like 18 point something. You get an 18 point something increase on the team
33
with
point two,
where
16 point something. Whatever, it doesn't matter.
16.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
can't do
yeah, yeah,
math.
whatever,
I'm a
whatever.
theorycrafter. Uh,
Doesn't matter, it doesn't matter.
but yeah, 16 point something versus if you do 100% team damage, you get 25. And a lot of the hypercarries also have some of the best cons in the game. So imagine your hypercarry have the biggest con increases and they do 100% of the team's damage effectively, compared to your sub DPS and everyone else who do less portion team damage and have a smaller overall increase. I feel like that is a double whammy, in terms of the vertical and also like artifact scaling of a 15% artifact improvement on Nefer is a 15% team DPS increase. A 50% artifact increase on your in Nefer on your Flynn's team is not a 15% team DPS increase. Right?
Yeah.
These sorts of small things add up and makes it more farming efficient, brute force, and everything else, right? With the Stellar meta specifically, I feel like Snezhnaya exemplifies all the things that, well, all the things that I do not trust in a Stellar team. She relies on sub DPS of Yaimiko. Her cons are pretty terrible.
Yes.
I think we can all point and laugh at that C1.
Hey, everyone.
Goodness, what is that?
Everyone says Risley C2 extremely powerful. Sandroni's constellations not that good.
Exactly. Like, I don't think you should be investing into Rising specifically, but whatever the Stellar Hypercarry DPS is probably going to go and be very strong and hold a lot of their liquidity over time. A lot of people have been asking me specifically about Odette and thinking about their C2 and something like that. Of, if you're ever going to go pull a unit, you need to think about of, if this unit that I'm going to pre-pull before something, who is it for? If Odette's just for Snezhnaya and you still follow a like mind like me of I don't think Snezhnaya is impressive enough, right? Then Odette's not going to be that great. But if Odette is going to be the Giga Hyper Carry insane Mavwika 2, then buy now. But you don't need to have so risk and so much worry about such things, because you can always pull on a rerun. At worst, if you go miss 2 Stygians now, but that means that means you save 2 pity, right? That you can now use for the next 3 years of your Stygian teams. That's gonna matter more. Either way, the long term is gonna matter far more than the short term if you're doing brute force. So missing a Stygian or 2, worst case, hypothetically, if you don't even pull for Odette, yeah. And I don't think Odette is such a guaranteed win that you topple the earth, right? Like, to give an example, Columbina is nearly worse than just going for a Nephicon or a Sigon Nepha, right? She's nearly there. But if you went and you got C2 Nepha and you got a C0 armor, then you can just freight train through basically any object until Columbina rerun. Or quite literally, if you went C2 Nepha and you even didn't get Lama, I think even though she's the most support-reliant unit the game has ever seen, I think you can pretty easily wait till Lama rerun.
I personally do think Columbina is probably the most important for Nefer, just for quality. Like, I just feel like playing Nefer with like Aina
It's
with Hyper,
terrible
it's
if you don't play Columbina.
Yeah.
It's so painful. DPS is still dead. It's terrible.
Yeah, it just feels bad.
You can red border it to go and give you some more dues and stuff to make it feel a little bit better, but there's only so much you can do. But yeah, it's just more giving that as like an example, right? Of Odette could be an insane unit, also could be a rather meh unit, but there is no need to go and risk of all-inning on Odette at the current moment, because reruns do exist. Playing it safe always is usually better, and yeah. You also had a point about the Archon. Like, I do want to go give people somewhat of a view on Archons that I don't think a lot of people follow. A lot of Archons haven't been generally that great. I'm gonna get murdered for this one. But Venti, he had like his 2 minutes of fame before Hoyo cut the plug on him. Zhongli, if we're talking about meta specifically in terms of playing the game to the most optimal level in the world, no. Zhongli ain't doing anything. Raiden, if you had cons on Raiden for the short time, it was amazing. But, that ended also pretty quickly. And then you had Nahida, which no, I'm gonna go put it in a concise manner. I think quite literally you could have picked Huta Vivi Vape, Child International, Sucrose National, Vertical Ayaka, Vertical Raiden, and basically anything instead of picking Nahida, and would have done better
Yo,
in that region.
you have just angered all the Hyper Bloom batters.
Yeah, basically. It's just that the High Bloom team doesn't scale strong enough in single target, and Huta Vivi Vape was so disgusting. Sucrose National, if you could actually play it, was also incredibly disgusting. Loki salute. That kind of existed there in Sumeru, and like Hatham didn't even really need Nahida that much. Like, can we run double Hydro Hatham or double Electro Hatham Hyper Bloom? Like, people forgot about that. Her cons are also kind of eh. Then we got Farina, which if people are not gonna murder me for the Nahida one, they're gonna do it for the Farina one. If you're playing the game meta-wise, not many of the teams. Well, basically, it's very hard to justify doing a Farina pull and making it honestly good. Because if you look in the time period, Lenny used Vape with Farina, that is true, but realistically, if there were more than 3 people playing Lenny, Kaya, Melt should have probably been the big team. And Lenny's probably one of the best users of Farina in this time period. Nuvalet kind of didn't use Farina because you had Nuvalet Vape, which a lot of people say it's harder than it sounds. It is easier than a lot of people
Yeah,
give
like
credit for. And
you mentioned like this Nebula Bay. I feel like I've rarely seen it. I feel like everyone has just been playing Nebula Farina, and people are saying it's OP.
yes, everyone plays it because it's easier and it's brain dead and it gets you 95% of the way there, and you don't need to worry about uh any of the extra things. But if you want, you can go browse through a bunch of old Karen runs. You can go browse through a bunch of old Nuvalet speedrunning, and you'll see Nuvi Tartag pops up a lot, and Nuvalet with just C1 instead of your Farina, or C2, or C3. And only once you get past C3, then Farina can start to come into show. But, if you get C3 to justify existence, that's kind of not great. Chlorine uses Overload. Alachino didn't really touch. Navia was kind of a brick, I'm gonna be honest. Hu Tao was dying in a corner post Farina, and even with the Shanyun team, like she wasn't really getting any fast clears or cheap clears at that sort of investment. So basically, Farina kind of didn't exist that much, and especially at Constellations. A C1 is really nice, which you do see in a Skirk team, which is a pretty nice increase. Like it is equal to Skirk C1, Esco C1. They're all basically the same, right, for now. But C2 is kind of bricks. Then we had Mavwika, which I don't think I can go say anything because of, honestly, pretty much perfect unit. Great cons, great vertical. She's got so many teams now with Hex Vape, Overload, Melt, and honestly, you can play her with anything and it'll work.
I'm gonna say she got saved by the combos. If she didn't have combos, she would have been outdated already. That's all I'm gonna say.
I still feel like the C2 is that strong that Loki, even without some of the combos, that you can destroy everyone that hard.
Bro, just imagine her kit was like modern kits where she's just like limit to like 3 finishers or whatever. I don't know. Limit to 8 donuts. You're stuck with doing 8. I don't know.
Technically, the 11 C3F is
I don't,
you know
I don't know. Something limiting. I don't know.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
It's a vice sort of thing. But then we got like Columbina, which Columbina is kind of an anomaly in terms of her kit is kind of not great, but the problem is you don't really have anything else. The fact that Nefa is that close to go replace Columbina in a bunch of situations is kind of testament to it. Zubai kind of needs Columbina for the LCR generation and the E and the sub DPS on Columbina kind of saves her, but if you could not run Columbina, you would. It's just that you're forced to. And that's kind of what makes it feel bad. And so I think Columbina is worth half of a salute from me. But this pass has not been that great for showing what future units are like. And that's why I would tell everyone, just because of the Archon, don't mean they're necessarily good. In fact, you could have done a pretty insane pull list if you literally pull everything but the Archon from 1.0 to now. Yeah, you'd miss Malvika, but that was clearly an exception. And unless the Sarita is very clearly the hypercarry exception of the world, or some insane support which is Mona 2 or something, I would be I would always just think twice and look at and see the evidence with your own eyes.
Yeah, I think it's good to be hesitant. Maybe I'm just a little bit more optimistic. I do feel like most of the characters where you mentioned, most of the Archons you mentioned are like not that good, like especially now, or like maybe the supports, maybe they're constant. Like if we're talking about investment, usually you don't invest in the constellation on the support, you rather on the DPS. And then like the exception Malwika is because she's a main DPS. Personally, I actually do feel like the Sarita is set up to be a main DPS if we follow, like for example, the Crowd Traveler's kit. I actually do like, for example, Malwika is generally a main DPS, but she was designed with off-field capabilities in mind, kind of like the dual function.
Exactly.
It does seem like Sarita is going to. It looks like she's going to be similar in like kit design as Malwika. So I think there's things going for her. But I think you make a good point where, good to see what's actually going to be her kit first before like sending it.
Exactly, and the Hoyo have this very common thing with Archons where they either go and have a supportive kit sub DPSy, but I could have a damage form, or the other way around. Like Columbine is the exact opposite of where you're mainly a support sub DPS, but you could be a on-field hypercarry like with the Llama and using a CAs. And I don't know which one she's gonna be. I do agree it's more likely to be closer to a hypercarry DPS, but numbers are going to go decide her. And also, how game-breaking they are in terms of combos and things. Because in some aspect, I do understand if combos have been reduced, but in some other aspect, it could be honestly viewed as a effective blip in the consistent train of how much tech do a lot of these units have. And then you can pretty much look at every unit in Natlan and say that they've got some kind of tech to go squeeze DPS. In non-cry, the better units generally got a lot of the less complicated tech, like Nefa 17.5-second rotation with Venus EA and Sucrosy. Like that's not that great in the grand scheme. Flynn's getting three bursts is like Zabai really has not much at all. But if you look at Varka, he's got a pretty decent treasure trove of it. Lohan has got a lot. Venti's got a lot. Like I think it could be honestly a rather small blip in the grand scheme, and like we have Hexvape Mona if you want to count that, which changed the combos on everyone pretty much. They were all of Mavwika, Alicino, and Morlani.
Yeah. Well, looking at, I mean, I'm a little bit more pessimistic here. Looking at Sanjoni and Vesna, it's not looking good on the tech side.
Looking at those two, yeah, nice.
It's not looking good for the tech side of things. It's pretty simple. Anyway,
you don't know. They can.
You don't know. Maybe, who knows?
Like it's just my opinion, but I think that Hoyo don't really care specifically about balancing the game itself. They'd rather just go release a unit and then make a boss to shill it. Cough cough Varka Doran. I don't think they're that great pre Nicole, but you can make a pretty easy Stygian boss to go and convince the masses that you go need to pull this unit to clear.
Brother, that guy.
As opposed to making
Varka shill did not exist. That was Malwika shill.
Yeah.
Malwika just cleared his bosses. There's no point.
A lot of things are Malwika shill. Like, goddamn, I hate that unit, but that unit do work.
Okay. Yeah.
He definitely know how to clock in.
Okay, so I think that's pretty much it. So yeah, stellar meta, Snezhnaya meta, probably same kind of thinking of if you want to potentially focus on stuff, focus on like meta and like dire. Maybe considered looking for some good vertical investment, and seems like it's going to apply into the future. So, do you have anything else you want to add at the end? Like anything you want to mention, or just anything?
I will say that these opinions are specifically my opinions. They do not reflect on anyone else in there, but or on the tier list or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
You can go and anytime message me, DM me, or ask on Twitter about specific things, and I can give you some more insight, or you can request a change, and if it's compelling enough, I can go and take it to the team. But no, other than that, I'm excited to go see how the Stygian tier list turns out in a coming couple days.
Yeah, me too. Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me. It's been, I mean, this recording has been an hour 17-ish, so been a quite a long yap, but I think it was very insightful. Um, Good to pick your brain a little bit, especially Theorycrafters like you have a lot of knowledge in this game. So yeah, thank you for your time, and yeah.